Hello everybody, welcome to Cooking with Vince. If you're new here, please like and subscribe to the channel. It would be highly appreciated. Alright guys, so before anybody gets butthurt in the comments, I am not from Italy. I've never claimed to be from Italy. I'm an American citizen. I was born in the US. So if anybody gets butthurt in the comments that I'm including Southern Italian in the description, I'm referring to my ethnicity. I'm not referring to my nationality. So if you don't like it, you know, feel free to not watch the video. But I'm actually going to be reacting to pasta grammars, how to make homemade porchetta. Porchetta is the pronunciation. I've never seen this video. You're going to get my live reaction. Here we go.
I'm a bit of a barbecue enthusiast, so I'm naturally drawn to perhaps the closest thing Italy has to American barbecue, porchetta. If you're not familiar with porchetta, you should be. It's slow-roasted pork seasoned with garlic and herbs. It's delicious, it's fatty, and perhaps the best part is the pork skin, which gets super crispy and crackly. If you do it right. The first time I had porchetta, I was like, okay, I need to be able to make this whenever I want it. The problem with making it at home, though, is, well, first we should explain how it's traditionally made.
And we're gonna see how it is traditionally made, and he's exactly right. So for those that don't really know what porchetta is, it's gonna be a boneless, slow roasted pork roast. It's eaten in multiple regions in Italy. Sometimes it could use fennel, garlic, rosemary, and different regions might have different ways of doing it slightly. We'll see if there's like an official way to do it, or maybe if there's like a specific city of origin during the video.
To make the traditional porchetta, what you need is a porchetta. A porchetta is a pig that is in between 60-90 kilos. Then you need to debone this quite big pig and then turn it into a porchetta.
So that's between 160 to 180 pounds for those of you in the US, 60 to 90 kilos. That'd be, you figure 1 pound, 2 kilos is 1 pound. So, around the 160 to 180 pounds.
Yeah, so chances are you're probably not prepared to make whole hog porchetta at home. I know I'm not. Now there are a ton of homemade porchetta recipes that make a simpler version that you can make at home. For a variety of reasons which we'll explain, we think that a lot of these recipes are still a little bit daunting. We've been going ham, pun intended, with our porchetta making recently, so we thought we would share some tips and tricks for how to turn this intimidating endeavor into an accessible home kitchen meal that just about anyone can cook. Before we get started, a big thank you to today's sponsor, Dreo. They recently sent us one of their Chef Maker combi fryers to try out. Ava was skeptical at first, but we've come to love it. It has made our porchetta process even easier, and we've been using it a ton to make today's recipe. Those of you who have used air fryers will probably recognize some of its functionality, but it has a bunch of features that make it more than just an air fryer. More on the Chef Maker later. It's time to prep the porchetta.
The cut of meat that you need is some pork belly. It's very important that you buy a pork belly that has still the skin on, because one of the most delicious parts of porchetta is actually the crispy skin that you can put in your panino. You can just eat like a crunchy snack. Try to find also a cut of pork belly that has some loin, some meat loin inside. If you can't buy just the pork belly, what can happen is that it can be maybe better, more fatty. When it comes to porchetta, a lot of people think that they need a huge piece of meat so they can eat porchetta, I don't know, for 3-4 months. But actually what you need is also a small piece. That is enough for 2, 3, 4 people. Is manageable, is doable, nothing too complicated.
I think that this...
Exactly, and that's more manageable for your average family. If you have a ginormous pork roast and, you end up freezing it, it's not going to be as fresh as if you had a smaller portion and, consumed it over a 2 or 3 day time period. That's kind of where you know, the quality over quantity factor starts to kick in.
Point is really important because making a porchetta using sort of the traditional homemade recipes, it always calls for a huge cut of meat. It's like cooking a Thanksgiving turkey. Now that's fine if you're feeding a lot of people, or if, like me, you're happy to eat porchetta out of the freezer for the next 3 months. If you want to experience porchetta and have an amazing dish, you don't need to make a huge whole porchetta. Plus, it's much more affordable and easier to find the meat. When we made a big porchetta in the past, we had to go to a local butcher and like custom order this cut of pork belly with the skin on. I think it cost like $200. For us, it was worth it because it was a fun project, but it wasn't very practical for just a normal meal. Smaller cuts of pork belly with the skin on we found in normal grocery stores. If you're having trouble finding one, check out Asian markets. They often sell a lot of pork belly, and you can find smaller cuts with the skin on. It's perfect for making a little mini porchetta.
The first things that you need to do with your porchetta is...
And that's some really good advice. When I do a porchetta video, I'm probably going to stick to what they're saying to do pork belly. We actually have a really good butcher shop in Pittsburgh called Strip District Meats, and you're able to get lots of different types of exotic meat. So I would think they probably have pork belly that I could get there to have it where it's a little bit more manageable. Because, you know, when you're making a whole pig at home, you're doing a pig roast, you have to have so many people to be able to consume it for the money to be worth it.
Is to adjust your piece of meat to be a good porchetta. For example, as you can see, if I roll this, what we have here is a small piece of skin, and this will never get crispy. And if we are doing the porchetta, we want the skin to be crispy as possible. So what we are going to do is just to cut this small piece of skin. Don't throw this away. Use this to make your beans.
Beans?
Fagioli con le cotiche. One of the best beans dish that you can find in all over the world.
Would you just put that in your pot of beans that you're cooking?
One day maybe we will show. So you see, all the skin is outside, and this will become delicious, crispy, crunchy, ready just to be enjoyed. Now is the time to season our porchetta, and I'm starting with some olive oil because the porchetta has a lot of animal fat, so we need some vegetable fat to make it healthier. And now is the moment in which you can massage your porchetta. And it's a very nice moment because it's very, how can you describe? It's very stress, against the stress. It's nice.
It relieves stress?
Sì.
To massage your porchetta?
Sì.
So you're doing the outside too, the skin, everything?
Sì, because we want the skin crispy, remember. If it happens to your piece of pork belly to have a piece of meat like mine, you don't have to throw this out because this will be just another layer of delicious porchetta, so don't throw it away. After the olive oil, we are going to add salt all over your piece of meat, and you keep massaging your meat. Next, black pepper. If you are the kind of person that loves garlic, this is the piece of meat, the meat dish that is for you, because we are going to use a lot of garlic.
Now, one way you could also maybe do this is if you actually crush your garlic. That way it releases more of those oils and aromas of the garlic itself, and you're maybe able to spread it all over the meat a little bit more evenly. The way that Ava does it, though, is great too, cutting it in smaller, smaller, manageable pieces to spread on the porchetta.
Now I'm going to use some rosemary. I have dried rosemary. If you have a fresh, you can use also fresh, and some fresh or dried fennel. This will give an amazing flavor to our porchetta. Now we need to close our porchetta. Actually, we need to tie our porchetta. I'm using a normal, how do you call this in English?
Like butcher twine?
Yes, that you use, for example, to make sausages, or you make to roast beef, or I don't know, what you use in the kitchen. And now we need just to roll, like, I don't know, if it was like a big bracciola. Everyone knows what a bracciola is.
I was just gonna say.
I know. Every Italian knows what a bracciola is. Every Italian American knows what a bracciola is.
Now, one thing I do want to say is that tying the porchetta very tight is definitely important because you don't want it to unravel during the cooking process. Vincenzo, on Vincenzos Plate, actually shows a recipe where he makes a homemade netting for the porchetta so it stays intact during the cooking process. And I could put a link for that video in the bottom of the description. But that is also a way that you can maybe keep it intact from it falling apart.
So you should have something like that. Be sure that all your herbs are inside, because this is what will give to the porchetta the amazing flavor. And now you close it.
Is there any particular way you need to do it?
Not really. I'm going to close it also on the other side, just because I want to be 100% sure that all the flavor of my porchetta will be inside.
As you can see, she is tying it pretty tight.
Pour some olive oil, and with this, massage the skin.
A lot of massaging.
A lot of massaging. We want a relaxed porchetta. We don't want a stressed porchetta. And now we need to leave our porchetta in the fridge overnight. Don't cover it because we want the skin dries out. We want that the skin can dry out a little bit, which means that when you cook the porchetta, the skin will be very, very crunchy. Here I have the porchetta after one night in the fridge. And as you can see, there is a different color of the skin. This is more brown, is more also hard. This is still pretty fresh.
Now it's finally time to cook the porchetta. Porchetta cooking happens in two phases. The first phase is the slow roast. You want to cook the porchetta in an oven that's set to about 300 to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Not too hot because we want to give the fat time to render. We want juicy meat with fat that melts in your mouth instead of just being a chewy mess. This brings up an important point. A lot of the recipes you'll find online, they'll tell you, oh, stick your porchetta in the oven and cook it for however many hours. As anyone who's cooked a lot of barbecue knows, that isn't really the best way to cook something like this. Slow cooking meat takes time, but it's difficult to predict how much time it takes. The meat is done when it's done, so how do you know? You need to cook to temperature. If using a conventional oven, you'll want to check the meat every now and then with an instant read thermometer like this, and you're trying to reach a temperature of about 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's higher than what you technically need for safe pork consumption, which is around 145 degrees. However, that higher temperature is necessary in order to get the right texture for the fat. So if you're cooking in a conventional oven, just make sure to check the temperature every now and then in multiple places. Rather than constantly checking, we're going to use the Chef Maker's built-in probe thermometer. You just insert it into the thickest part of the meat. You set the ambient temperature of the cooker, the internal temperature that you're looking for, and the chef maker does the rest.
Because this cooker is very efficient, I will set the temperature, the ambient temperature, about 250 degrees, while with a normal...
And it's interesting that they're using, it looks to be like an air fryer. I don't know if it's a portable oven or if it's an air fryer. Definitely pretty interesting that they're doing that, and definitely easier than having to deal with like a really big, huge oven, especially if it's a smaller porchetta that they're making. And you know, I know it's probably not authentic, but it would be interesting to see what porchetta would taste like in a smoker, like an electric smoker that you would use for like American barbecue. A little bit of a different way of doing it, obviously, than just cooking it in the oven.
Normal conventional oven, you should need about 300 degrees. And while we are waiting until our porchetta is cooked, let's talk about today's sponsor.
The Dreo Chef Maker was born on Kickstarter, where it raised well over $1.5 million, and we can see why, because it's a very impressive cooker. It has a ton of different uses that those who've used a traditional air fryer are familiar with. It can bake, it can dehydrate, it can air fry, but it has some unique features that make it much more versatile than an air fryer. First of all, it has the probe thermometer. Like we're doing with our porchetta, you can insert the thermometer into a cut of meat, for instance. Just set the temperature you want, and you'll know that you'll get a perfect cook.
When people think that a tool like that doesn't belong to traditional Italian cooking, they are making a big mistake, because traditional Italian cooking doesn't mean that we can't use the best technology that we have. This for sure is not a replacing if you want to fry your food, because if you want to fry your food you need to use oil. But this is an amazing tool to cook your meat, to cook your fish. You are 100% sure that the meat is properly cooked.
It also has a crazy chef mode where it uses artificial intelligence algorithms to perfectly cook your food. I'm a barbecue guy. I feel very comfortable with low and slow cooking meat. I am terrible at cooking steak. I always overcook it or undercook it, and I used the Chef Maker's chef mode recently to make a veal steak that came out perfectly. It has this water tank that you fill, and it...
Now for me, the easiest way that I cook steak is on a cast iron skillet, and it's just really experience. Now you can obviously get thermometers, and that's going to be the best way to get a medium rare cut of meat, which from my experience, generally between like, and again, this is a range depending on what you consider medium rare, but maybe like around 130 degrees Fahrenheit is generally 130 to maybe 135 or 140 is generally what medium rare would look like in a steak. But to me, ultimately, since I've cooked so many steaks on a cast iron skillet, it's more just about just feeling. And me in general, I tend to like my steak a little bit more undercooked as opposed to overcooked. Some people that like their steak a little more overcooked, you may want to pay a little bit more attention to getting that temperature a little bit as more refined as possible. But for the porchetta, that's what's going to be important, because remember, porchetta is pork, and as everybody probably knows here, undercooked pork can make people very, very sick. You definitely want to make sure that your porchetta is cooked at least to that 145, and what Harper was saying, making sure that it's even higher than that, so it's going to be the right consistency as far as taste at 160, 165 temperature.
And it actually intelligently analyzes the meat and will spray atomized vapors of water to, I don't even fully understand the science behind it. I just know how well it works. But it will use this vapor spray to help regulate the temperature and get the perfect crust on the outside while keeping the perfect internal temperature of the meat. It's kind of weird voodoo magic, but it's really incredible when you see it in action.
And if it happens that you have also leftover pasta, it's time to rid off of your microwave, because this machine is much better than a microwave.
It's time to what your microwave?
Read off.
Read off?
I don't know, how do you say when you don't want the microwave in your home? Because you don't need, you have this.
You mean throw it away?
See, you don't need it.
One thing I really like about the Chef Maker is the big viewing window. You can actually see what's going on inside. We also really appreciate it because we're big on being efficient.
Most of the time I cook just for me and Harper, and I don't cook a lot of food at once, so it's wasteful just to turn on a big oven for a small lasagna. And that is the case in which this machine can really help you, because you will cook an amazing lasagna, it will be perfectly crispy on top, very soft inside, and you are also saving a lot of energy.
A big thank you to Dreo for sponsoring today's video. We'll put a link down below where you can check out the Chef Maker for yourself. Now that the slow roast is over, it's time for phase 2, and that means crisping the skin. This is probably the trickiest part about making porchetta.
This is a very important part, because now we need with a knife to make a small hole in the skin, because we want the fat, release some fat, so the skin it will be much crispy. You need to do this on all the sides of your porchetta, and it doesn't matter how you cook the porchetta. This is a very important step.
The skin needs to be exposed to very high heat for a short period of time so that it bubbles up, it gets crispy, it gets crackly. If it's not done properly, you might have some of the skin that's crispy, but then a lot of it ends up just being a totally chewy, hard piece of I don't know what, but it's not good to eat. Now, there are a few ways to accomplish this. In the past, we've made porchetta out on a grill, for instance, and so what we did was we cooked our porchetta on a rotisserie over a very hot fire, and that worked brilliantly to make the crispy skin. But it's not the most convenient way to do it for home cooks. If you're cooking in a conventional oven, the best thing to do is to turn on your broiler to the maximum temperature. Get the porchetta up as close to the heating element as possible. You'll have to turn it occasionally to make sure it crisps evenly. However, we've come to prefer a different method, using the Chef Maker's air fryer function. Air fryers work with convection heat. It's in a very small chamber, very high heat, with a fan that blows the heat all around. It is specifically designed to cook the outside of food at a very high temperature without drying out the inside, which is exactly what you want with porchetta.
And if you do in a cooker like that, or you do also under the broiler in your oven, it's very important that from time to time you flip the porchetta, because all the skin should be crispy. Here there is a smell of a real porchetta. It's amazing. I think we are very close to be done here. So, Harper, do you want to see how our porchetta looks?
Absolutely.
This is the kind of skin we want on our porchetta. And now, even if the smell is amazing, and the only thing that you want to do after you made your porchetta is to dig in soon, we need to wait 10-15 minutes, because it needs to rest a little bit.
We don't want it stressed. We want to let it relax.
See, we want a relaxed porchetta.
And similar to steak, once you cook a steak, you want to let it rest a little bit, or else when you cut into it, all the juice is just going to come out. You want all the juice, to soak into the meat, so when you cut it, it doesn't just become a mess.
One of the best ways to eat porchetta is in a sandwich.
Oh, listen to that crunch. That smells amazing. It looks amazing.
That is amazing. And most, look at this. Wow.
Can I have a piece?
It's one of the crunchiest things that you can eat.
If you've never had porchetta before, it's real hard to describe how amazing it smells in here, but it is so good.
And also porchetta is good when it's hot, but it's even better when it's cold, because in Rome, or where they make the porchetta, they serve it completely cold. So it's something that you can make and leave there in your fridge for 2, 3, 4 days, and it will be always amazing.
Do you remember the first porchetta sandwich I ever had? Some of you guys might have seen it. It was in a video where we went to Rome. We were with my dad, and we went to this little place. This guy just had this big porchetta. He just carves off slices. It was so good. And what I love about porchetta sandwiches is that the porchetta is so good, you don't need anything else on that sandwich. This is just bread and porchetta. That's it. Try it and trust us, it's amazing. Oh, yes.
It's crunchy. It smells amazing.
We've been on a porchetta thing recently, but it doesn't get old. Every time a porchetta comes out, it is just the best. Buon appetito. That has to be, if not the best, at least in the top 5 sandwiches in the world.
It's the best.
It's so great.
When the porchetta is good.
Now, you and I, who food is like our life, we are into like food projects. When we made our big porchetta, it was fun, it was rewarding as kind of like a hobby type thing. But really, this recipe can be simple. It can be easy. You don't need to cook 10 pounds of meat to make a porchetta. In the Chef Maker, it took an hour and a half maybe to cook, whereas a lot of the recipes you'll see take like 4 hours, 5 hours to cook.
In fact, Harper, because we made you porchetta, I will prepare those for my dad, and I will leave to my dad when I'm back in US, so at least my dad can enjoy the porchetta.
Her dad is thrilled that we've been cooking porchetta recently because it is one of his favorite foods. And in the past, we would always, anytime we were passing through Rome, because usually when you come to Italy, you fly through Rome, we would specifically stop in Rome and get a ton of porchetta, have them vacuum seal it, bring it down here to Calabria. That was part of why we started just thinking like, why don't we just make this at home more often? A big thank you once again to Dreo for sponsoring today's video. We'll put a link down below if you want to check out the Chef Maker for yourself. Before we go, a quick shout out to a pasta grammarian in action. John made some incredible looking arancini.
John, you did a very, very good job. Bravo, John.
Compared to how simple this recipe is, makes arancini look like
a project.
Really, that is a project, so well done, John. All right, guys, we better sign off here and get Papa Tutti some porchetta stat. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Follow us on social media at Pasta Grammar, and we'll see you next time. Ciao. I just realized a whole other advantage to making a mini porchetta. You get a higher ratio of skin, crispy skin, to meat on the inside. Because sometimes when we go to Rome and you buy porchetta, they're cutting off such a big thing, sometimes you don't even get skin. You get even more of the best part.
Ava, Harper. Bravo, buenissimo. Great video, and it's interesting the Dreo chef master for making porchetta and doing it in small, manageable quantities, because they're exactly right. If you did a ginormous porchetta, that might discourage a lot of people from doing it because of the size, making sure that it could get eaten without going bad and not having the waste. So Ava, Harper, it looks like, you know, both of you can do no wrong, and that's my reaction. And again, I hope everybody likes and subscribes to the channel. It's always highly appreciated. Thanks.